So welcome all to today's AWS S3 session. So let me share my screen. So I hope my screen is visible to all. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So just keep picking up. Okay, so this session would be more kind of an intro plus in-depth, not exactly in-depth, but you will be little more than average person, or maybe a kind of it would be a hands-on experience. You will be studying or knowing the more in-depth details of the S3, how it works, what are the different functionalities, what are the different use cases of the S3, and later on we will also use S3 in DevOps pipeline. So in many of the organizations, S3 is very quite useful or used in terms of storing the artifacts or storing the some files on S3. So build artifacts, some of the people they store on S3, or some of the times some of the files needed for deployment or for any purpose they are stored on the S3. So I think in this session you will be getting aware what is S3. Okay, so this is the basically the today's agenda. So once you know the S3, you will be able to better visualize the use cases of S3 in terms of DevOps. So today's session we will see what is the S3, what are the different characteristics, how the data is stored in S3. So they are certain consistency models which we will talk about. Then we will talk about what are the buckets, keys, and objects. What are how to secure your S3 buckets using the control list. Then objects stored in a S3, and at the end we will discuss some of the use cases, and we will also um, see the one of the use case how to host a static website using the AWS S3. So let's start it. So first, what is a S3? So S3 is a AWS service which basically translates into a simple storage service. That's why it's named as S3. So it is a very durable, high scalable object storage service. So you can store objects. Objects can be your files. Correct?
Hello.
So it's a block storage
Yeah,
service.
Anil.
Yeah.
Sorry to
Yes.
interrupt. I feel like your voice is breaking like yesterday.
Okay. Just
Is it for only for me or everyone else? Can other guys please confirm?
For me also.
So other. Okay. Just a second. Let me switch. Because of this lockdown, many people they are hooked up to the networks. So sometimes
No, continue.
okay. Now just tell me, is it better or whenever it breaks, just let me know.
Better than before. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So okay. So we were just talking about the S3 service. Okay. So it's a block storage where you can store the files. Okay. So So with S3, like just like similar to other AWS services, you pay only for the storage which you actually use. Like in many of the services, you have to reserve how much memory would be you would be using. But S3, like whatever you are using, like if you upload a 1 gigabyte of object, you will be charged for that only. Correct. So you don't have to reserve in advance, like what would be your estimated storage at the end of a month. So you don't have to pay for your estimated usage, but you have to actually pay for your actual usage. So okay, then other advantages are similar, like there is no minimum fees or no setup cost. Okay, uh, uh, just let me keep it in this way, because in case if there are certain chat questions, so I can just have a look and reply there only. Okay. So okay, so Amazon S3 can be used alone. Some people, they use it for storing their files. Okay. Some people, they use it with other services to set up a complete architecture of an application. So we will see some of the use cases where and how this Amazon S3 is used. Okay, and definitely, like S3 provides a cost-effective object storage for wide variety of use cases, including cloud application, content distribution, backup, archiving, disaster recovery, and big data analysis. Okay, so these are the very important characteristics of a S3. Like you will appreciate why we should use S3 over the other storage mechanisms. Like first one is the durability. Amazon S3 provides durable infrastructure to store important data, and it is designed for durability of uh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 9 knives. So they have a concept of 9 knives or 5 nines or 3 nines. So basically, this 99.9999% tells like durability of your object. So your data will remain like this is the percentage of chances, like your data will be there on cloud, and you can retrieve it back. So if I just do a minus from 100, that is the percentage, like your data can be lost. So this is very high number of, like durable, uh, what we can say. Mm, so this is a kind of confidence S3 has on their Amazon has their confidence on their S3 surveys, like your data will never be lost. So you will be able to retrieve your data. So your durability of your data is this much. Okay. Okay. So there is a question, like what is a block storage? So okay. So there are a couple of types of, like you can distribute storage in terms of stream storage or a block storage. Block storage is like when you say, like you have a one one file, for example. So file is a example of a storage block storage example. Then there is a example, like stream storage, like if you have a data stream coming, and some of the services, they just keep on collecting the data from stream and just start collecting into a particular file. So here that it is not a stream data. So data will be uploaded in a single go, or like whole file will be uploaded. So this is like file perspective storage. This is not a, it does not provide a stream functionality for your data. Okay, so I hope that answers the question. So, and next characteristic is low cost. So S3 basically, like or even Amazon has a functionality where the whole uh, concept is like the more you use, less you pay. So for bulk usage of their service, they have lower cost compared to if you use it for some small amount of data. Okay, and obviously there is no upfront fees and no minimum commitments. Okay. Then availability is S3 is designed in a such a way, like you have a 99.99% availability of object over a given year. So how they achieve it? We will discuss it how it works actually. So they have a service level agreement, and they will provide you this 99.99% availability of object over a given year. So like you can always retrieve your data. So just like they could not make it 100% for unseen godly effects. So but you can assume it like your whatever you store on S3, that would be available anytime, anywhere, and that will never be lost. Okay, so then you can also choose the how much the latency can be, and cost, and other things based upon your region. So each region has different regulatory requirements, like you will have some data protection laws of one particular region. So whenever you are storing, you should choose your region accordingly. uh, okay, then security. So all the S3 data transfers, they happen over the secure channel, which is basically SSL channel, or some people they call it now latestly as TLS channel. So whatever goes from client to S3, that is encrypted, so that any man in middle cannot happen. Nobody can sniff your packets or read your data. And they also have a very strong permission and control access policies. We will just see how it works. Okay, then scalable, obviously scalability is uh, provided by the AWS itself. So whatever data you have, you just keep on putting up on the S3, and Amazon will be taking care of increasing the storage or based upon future needs. So basically, whatever data you have, you can upload, and you will never face a issue there is no memory left. So okay, then there are certain other functionalities which are available, you can configure S3 to send a event notification in terms of email, SMS, or you can use a SQS, which is basically a simple queue service. So whenever some data is put on your S3, event is generated, and event will trigger workflows, alerts, or no other processing. So it depends use to use case. If you assume a case where you have a image processing application, so whenever somebody uploads an image to a bucket, you want some transcoder starts working, and starts processing your file. So in that case, these S3 event notifications can trigger that transcoding of your files. So these are the different cases where you can use these events. But from DevOps perspective, these may not be very important, but just for knowledge purpose, it is good to know. Then next point is high performance. Okay, so S3 basically has a functionality where you can upload 5 terabytes of data. Okay, and one file which is 5 terabyte of size can be uploaded, and any file till 5 GB can be uploaded in a simple way. You can just use your browser, but any file beyond 5 GB has to be uploaded using multi-part. So they provide some S3 client applications which you can use, and if you are using SDK, then you have to choose a multi-part. So multi-part upload basically starts uploading using the parallel threads. So your file starts uploading in multiple parallel chunks, and then S3 assembles together and then saves that file as a single one. Then S3 is integrated with different can be integrated with different services for content delivery services, for low latency, high data transfer rates, and those other things. And integration basically S3 can be integrated with any service which needs to upload or download data, which needs to store or consume stored data. S3 is very easy to use. It is a web-based management console if you just want to do a simple upload or download. And if you want to integrate with some application, they have a readily available APIs or SDKs which can help you to integrate programmatically with other applications. Okay, so till now I think what is S3, what are the different characteristics of S3, this topic is clear. Okay, so in case of any queries, just put it on a chat, we will take it up. Okay, so in case of no questions, let's continue. So how S3 achieves that 99.999% of data durability or availability, that can be easily understood from this particular picture. So here first step is when we store a particular file, just in case mypic.jpg. So what will happen, this whole picture or file is distributed, or it is redundantly stored on multiple data centers. So so if I upload a one file, okay, so it will upload to data center 1, as well as then it could be replicated to data center 2 and data center 3. So this is how even if something goes wrong to data center 1, then you can always retrieve your, you don't have to, but AWS internally will get that file from data center 2 or data center 3. So this is how they achieve this data durability and data availability. So you don't have to choose how many data center it needs to be replicated. So that is all done by AWS. So they have a different algorithms and different formulations to back up your data. Okay, so this is the first part when you store a file. But once when you get a file, so it may happen file may have been first served by data center 1, but when you go to fetch it, so you may get this file from data center 3, depending upon whatever algorithm they have to reduce the data latency. So this is how they have a distributed storage service, which ensures your data is always available and it remains in the S3 forever until unless you delete it yourself. Okay. So this is a consistency model. This may be useful, even in DevOps perspective also. So S3 has basically two types of models, which they call a consistency model, which is read after write consistency for puts of new objects. So just like in previous session, previous slide, which we saw data can be first stored on a one data center 1, and then it gets replicated to other data centers. Okay, so for any put request, S3 stores the data across the multiple servers to achieve high availability. This is what we saw from the earlier picture. A process stores an object to S3 and will immediately available to read the object. Okay, a process stores a new object to S3. It will immediately list the keys within the bucket. It does not take time to propagation. The changes are reflected immediately. So basically, like whenever you upload a file, okay, so here like you upload this file, and if you just try to get this file, you will be able to get this file immediately, because this data replication, it does not take time. So how it works exactly in S3, that can be a matter of debate, because that is all their internal implementation. But the point is here, like as soon as you put a file, you will be able to retrieve it back in a no time. As soon as it is saved, you will be able to list it in buckets, and you will be able to retrieve it. So that is the first read after consistency model for new objects. Okay. Then next model is the eventual consistency for overwrite, puts and deletes. So basically, it talks about when you delete a particular file, especially. So for puts and deletes to an object, the changes are reflected eventually. They are not available immediately. Okay. So we will see in detail little later. So let's read all the top points. If the process replaces the existing object with a new object, you try to read it immediately until the change is fully propagated. The S3 might return a prior data. If process deletes an existing object, immediately try to read it until the change is fully propagated. S3 might return the deleted data. If the process deletes an existing object, immediately list off all the keys with the within the bucket until the change is fully propagated. S3 might return the list of key of the deleted key. Okay, so now let's come back to this picture and see if I just delete this particular file. So what second consistency model says, like if I delete this object and if I try to just get it before this delete is replicated to all the data centers on which this particular file was stored, you might still be able to get this particular file. Okay. And similarly, if you replace this file with some other content, and if you just try to get this immediately, you might get the old file, because this replication of files takes time. So this is very important. In terms like for delete, you should wait for some time so that the change is replicated, and then you read that particular file. So this is the eventual consistency of overwrites for puts and deletes. And similarly, listing will always might not return you the new file if you have replaced it or deleted it. So you still might be able to get the old file in the listing itself. So I hope this is very this is clear, because from DevOps perspective, it might be possible if somebody is using S3 for the artifact as an artifact repository, if you delete something or replace something, then in that case you should wait for some time before that change is replicated, or at least you should be able to compare the change, what was the previous and what is an current one, and then take decision whether the change has been replicated or not. So this is the one point which should be taken into the consideration. So I hope this is good enough. Is there any doubt on these consistency model or anything till now?
No, you are good.
Okay, then let's come to the next topic. So basically, what is the S3? So Hmm. So now, if we talk about S3, then there are certain keywords like terminologies which are associated with the S3. One is the bucket, which you will listen a lot. So bucket is nothing but it's a logical container of the objects. So it's just like it is a kind of a folder, top level folder. Uh, okay, so in that particular folder or like uh, container, whatever you call it, you can put files, objects, or you can also put you can create subfolders also. So, there are certain characteristics of this S3 bucket. The name of this buckets are global. Okay, so if you create a bucket name, that will not be like it has to be unique for your account, but it has to be unique across the globe. So otherwise, it will throw an error like this bucket name already exists. Then there is a soft limit of 100 buckets per AWS account. So this number keeps on increasing, but this is a soft limit. So if you want more buckets, you can always reach out to AWS customer care, and they can increase it from the backend. Okay. So there is some nomenclature convention for bucket name. So minimum character is 3 and maximum is 63 characters. All characters have to be in lowercase. Name cannot start with a dot, and it must be a DNS compliant, etc., etc. So we will just create a bucket, and we'll see how it works. So this is one of the example, like sd.amazon.com, then slash bucket name, and then object name. This is how you can access your any object or bucket. So okay, so let's try to create one bucket, and then we will go to the next section, next slide basically. So this is the uh, let me switch to new console, because okay, this is how new console looks like. So you can always switch to the old console. That is okay. So this is how the AWS S3 console looks like. Okay. Uh, so if you see the some slides, then if you see the old previous console, then that would look different. But overall concept wise or functionality, it is almost same. So let's try to create a bucket. Okay, so one more important thing before we move. So you will notice this S3 has a global region. So that's why if you name it, that name has to be unique. So S3 is not it's basically one of the very few global services which are available in AWS. So IAM is one, global is second. Okay, so let's create a bucket. Okay, so here let's create a bucket DevOps Guru 2020. Okay, and where do we want to create this bucket? So since we are in India, let's create a bucket in India, so that if we put up a particular file and try to retrieve it, so latency would be less. Then there are certain what you can say, restrictions or access controls which are available. So as we discussed yesterday, by default, AWS, whenever it creates a particular resource, it has these, or it has a no permission. Okay? So if you see, all public access has been blocked for this bucket. As soon as this bucket is created, you won't be able to access it using the URL. Okay. Then bucket also provides a functionality of versioning. We will see what is a versioning. So by default, it is disabled. Okay. Then there is also a functionality where you can encrypt the data which is stored in the AWS bucket. So though there are certain restrictions, like only the owner can see it, or like you can give a permission who can access it, but some of the times the some of the people might not be still comfortable with data being stored in the AWS data centers. So AWS also provides a functionality where you can encrypt your stored data. So like if anybody has a access to AWS, which will not happen actually, but still like for their own satisfaction and for their own security certifications, they can enable this service. So whatever is stored, that data gets encrypted, and whenever you download it, only then that data is decrypted back. So there are other functionalities which we will see later. So let's try to create a bucket. Okay, so since we so like this bucket is already this name has been already taken up, so it says like name already exists. So let's say let's create it as a version 01. Just try to see if this name is available. Okay, great. So this name, this bucket has been created, and like you can upload files to this bucket. So we will come to all these different sections. So here you can see area is area HDR specific Mumbai region, and if you upload a file, you can see. You can always upload or download files using your AWS account or IAM accounts, but publicly this can't be like accessed. If I just see, so okay, so we will just see how to grant access. Okay. Then next part is which is very commonly used is the S3 keys and objects. So whatever you store inside the S3, that is known as an object. If you store a file, that is named as a object. So S3 bucket can contain any number of objects. So there is no limit, like it can store 1,000, 2,000, 10,000, or 1,000,000 objects. It can store any number of objects. So object contents are opaque to S3 and can be anything. So you can store any type of data in S3 bucket. So it can be anything, like it can be a movie, it can be unstructured file, or it can be a it can be your database backup also. Correct. So okay. Then next is the normal object, which is up to 5 GB. So if you have a 5 GB of data, that is stored as a normal object, and if you have any data which is size beyond the 5 GB but less than up to the 5 terabyte, that is stored as a multi-part object. So multi-part means big files takes a if they are sequentially uploaded, then they will take a very long time. So they are stored as a they are broken into small parts, and then uploaded to the S3. This is what we call a multi-part objects. Okay, then each and every object is represented by a unique key. So you can say S3 creates a hash map where it has a key, and against that key it has a object, or maybe a path to an object. So this helps in a easy easily you can find an object. So the latency for finding or listing an object becomes very less. So keys can be of 1024 bytes. This could be the size. Keys are not hierarchical, since it's a hash map, so it has flat structure. Can be simulated to be hierarchical, or okay. So key allows you to add a slash to, in a name. So you can try to simulate something like, this is eDevOps slash 2020 slash file one, those kind of a thing. So you can simulate the hierarchy of a objects, but actually keys are not hierarchical. So we will see like when we create more files and upload to the S3. Okay. Then list APIs help with the hierarchical simulation. Okay, so let's try to see uh, how we can upload a file. So let's create a folder, or let's try to just upload a file itself. Add a file. This is what we had. I am hands-on training. So okay. So these are the certain characteristics, this is the user ID, what are the different permissions you want to give. So it may be possible you just upload a file and you don't want to give a permission to write something to this file, so you can just give a read only permission. So these are the object level permissions, what they can do. Okay, so we will come back to this section later, but let's just upload it. We just see back. This is our bucket, and this is the file. Okay. So here these are the different properties. So key is nothing but AWS, whatever name you give, so it will take it as a key itself. Okay. Then it adds some tag for internal identification. Okay. So this is the URL. Like if this object was on had a public access, then you could use it using this URL itself. Now it is saying access denied because the whole bucket doesn't have a public access. So we will see and come back to this section. Then storage class we will come and see. Encryption we have not yet enabled. Okay, so that you can go through the different permissions, different properties of this object. So you have a read access, and for permissions anybody can read the permissions and write the permissions. So this is how object on a inside the S3 bucket looks like. So then you have a different properties, definitely, you can go and see the properties of a bucket. So we will come back to this little late. Okay. So now coming back to the how the access is controlled to the S3. So this is very important. So you have a S3 bucket as as depicted in this one. Then you can put different types of objects to it. Okay. So whole S3 bucket has a bucket policy and a bucket access control list. Okay. So this defines how a bucket can be accessed. So if we see, there are different types of object or bucket access control list. So object access control and bucket access control list, they are almost same. Okay. So this can be read for listing only. This access control list value can be a write, read, write, full control, and those kind of a things. And similarly, there can be a grants who can have these access control lists, only owner can do the read, only owner can do the full control, or everybody if it is a public or particular AWS account, if you want you have created some bucket and you want to share it with some other AWS account. So in that way, that is also possible. Or you want to share this particular bucket or object with all the AWS authenticated users. So AWS authenticated users can be AWS users or like any identity provider integrated with the AWS. Okay, so this is how a bucket policy looks like. So um, we will just go through it once and then we will use it in our one of the use case. So in most of the AWS, like services, you will see the policies in JSON form. So JSON form, it's like most of the parameters they are same. So one is the ID, like then the statements will basically tell you what service and what is the restriction. So for example, here the resources. This is the bucket URL. Okay, and we have put conditions like IP address which has a source IP of these like 50.50.50.0 with subnet 24 can access this. So basically we have whitelisted these IP addresses to access to this bucket and on S3. Okay, so and principal is basically the account ID. So this is how you can read the bucket policy. Okay. Now there are different features of S3. So we will just go through it and then do the hands-on on the S3 directly itself. So you have a versioning functionality. So versioning is just like if you're aware of like Git or other source code management tools. So you can create multiple versions of like files. So for example, if you create a one version of S3 object, then you upload it with the same name. So S3 will keep the older version plus new version. If you upload a new version, then it will have a three versions. You will be able to see that all three versions. And you can also delete in a particular version also. Like for example, you uploaded a one artifactory and like artifact and that was somehow not working. So what will you do? You can remove the latest version and the old version will be available there. So this is what the versioning of the file works. So we will see one of the example here. So let's enable the versioning on the bucket itself first. Okay. By default, versioning is enabled. Okay. So there is one point which needs to be taken care, because whenever you create a version, so S3 keeps the old version, copy of a old version and new version. Okay. So if you upload a big file, for example, if you upload a 1 GB of file and you enable this versioning, and if you upload another file which is like just a small correction on the top of that file, and that also size is 1 GB. So in that case, you will be consuming 2 GB of S3 space. So versioning has to be thoughtfully done, so that because it increases your data consumption. So if you have a 10 versions of that particular file, then you will be straight away consuming the 10 GB of your S3 bucket, your S3 storage. So that is very important. Okay, so let's enable the S3 versioning and let's create a file. Let's let me create a folder and I will show you how the versioning works. So let's create a text file here. Okay, text file. Okay, where is the text file option? Okay, so say S3 Check. Let's open with the Notepad plus open with that. Okay. So say version 1. Okay. And okay, so there is one question like uh, where we will get any info cross our quota. Okay, so that we will come to the next topic next week. Though we can always see how much you are consuming on the SC dashboard. So I will show you that also. Okay, so when you cross your quota, you can set reminder. So quota is in the sense like no SC doesn't put any restrictions how much you can put, but that quota has to be from your side. And especially for SC, like you have I think 30 GB of data which you can upload. So in that case, like for pre-tier, for hands-on, or for uh, training purposes, this quota term is more relevant because after that they start charging you. But for commercial or organizations, like this quota is more kind of a own limit, how much you should use. Okay, so let's come with this one. So what you can do, there are two ways. You can straight drag and drop files here, like similarly like this. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so this part we will come little later, but okay. So just give you okay, just skip it for the now. We will come it back. Okay. So if you see here, go and see the details. Since this is the first version, so it will only show the one version. Okay. Now let's try to uh, modify this file. Version 2. Okay. And upload this file again. So if I go and see the properties of this particular file, you will see two different versions. Like this is the latest and this is the old. So if you just want to open the old file, you can always download and view it. So if I just view, so here you have the version 1. Okay. So similarly, you can create multiple versions, and you can divide basically do the basically you can just go back to the old version also if you want. If you are just try to delete this particular version, download. Okay, so this permissions will come little later, and this one. This is how you can open file. So whenever you open a file, it will return you the latest version of the file. Okay, but if you want to download the old version, you can always download. Here you can always delete the version also. If I just delete the latest version, then you will be left with the old version. If I see here and open the file, you will get the old version. So this is the versioning of the S3 objects. Okay, so there are certain questions. Let's take those questions. So if there is no such quota, I can believe you can confident. Yes, yes, that is true. Like quota, like there's no limit how much data you can upload, but you can create a alert. Like yeah, that would be a kind of a self alert. How much limit you want to set. Okay, so a single object limit is 5 GB and single object limit is not 5 GB, but object size can be a 5 terabyte. But the way how you upload it, that is what is limited. So single like normal upload is 5 GB. The way we were just doing it, it is a normal way of uploading a file, and this way we can upload up to 5 GB. But if you want to upload a file bigger than 5 GB, in that case we have to use the multi-upload functionality. So that is also there. I will just show you little later. Okay. So, but for free tier limit is 30 GB. Okay. So that is the basic concept. The next question is if it comes to commercial purpose, then it will be based upon our usage and there won't be any limit. Yes, that is true. This limit is only for the free tier so that you can do your hands-on and learn the different concepts of S3. Good. So any other questions? Hopefully, whatever I'm explaining, you are able to like able to catch up that concept. Details or more hands-on you do, you will be able to get more things and more details to do the hands-on. Okay. So next, okay. This is the versioning. Okay. So next part is the server access log. So you can enable the server access logs which will record when an object was accessed and how it was accessed. So those kind of a functionality is also there. So by default that is also disabled because that further uses the other AWS service like uh, just forgot the name. So we will cover that service also, so whatever the access has been done, so you can see who accessed it when they accessed it and what kind of access was that. Okay. Then you similarly you have an object level logging. So you can okay, so it's basically a cloud trail. I just forgot the name. So you can also record the object level API activities, if somebody tried to write, read, or do any kind of operations on a objects using APIs. Those things can also be recorded or logged. So you can use a CrowdTrail data events for that, and you can access who uh, did it. But the logging basically comes with an additional cost. So if you enable it, so basically you will be using the CloudTrail functionality, which is a chargeable uh, uh, functionality of the S3. And then you have a default encryption. So whatever is stored, that is is stored in a encrypted manner. So, but from end user perspective, whenever you upload a file, that would be a plain text. You will be able to see the contents. When you retrieve it, you will be able to see the actual content, not the encrypted. So it's basically encryption happens whenever you store something on the uh, server itself. Okay, so coming back to here, so let's come to the. Just give me a second. Okay, sorry for inconvenience. So now come to the other properties which we just saw there. Okay, so encryption is obviously there are different types of encryption available. So you can use the AES 256, which is encryption keys and everything would be managed by AWS, and so you can enable it. Okay, or otherwise you can also use the AWS KMS service, which is key management service, where you can create your own key, or you can use your own key, or you can use AWS KMS to use their AWS managed key. So basically AWS KMS is nothing but it's a HMS, basically hardware module. Basically it's a dedicated encryption module which basically generates, stores, and manage the whole encryption keys. Okay, or if you have your own encryption keys, you can always bring in your key and use that for encryption. So that can be done, but let's use it, this one. Okay, so now we have secured our bucket also. Whatever is stored in this bucket, they will be encrypted. And similarly, server access logging can be enabled. Okay, so these extra logs can increase your storage bill. So basically, you can enable logs, and logs would be put into a particular bucket. So let's disable it. We need another one. Okay, so object logging, you can enable it. Okay, so if you have a CloudTrail already created, you can give that CloudTrail, and then your all logs, object level access logs, will be appended to that CloudTrail stream itself. So this is how it works. Okay. Then next functionality. Okay, so this is one functionality which I intentionally left at that time. So as soon as you upload a particular object to S3 bucket, so S3 gives you a wide range of storage classes. So storage class is just you have a tape storage, and then you have a normal hard disk which basically rotates, and then you have SSDs, and those kind of different types of storage classes. Similarly, S3 also provides you the different storage classes. So one and you can choose these based upon your how frequently you want to access the data, and from different particular parameters. So let's discuss some of the top storage classes. First is the standard, which if you don't choose anything, by default it would be a standard. So it is designed for frequent access data, and the data is replicated on at least 3 availability zones. Okay, so there is no minimum storage duration, minimum billable object size is not a limit. You don't have a monitoring and automation piece, and you don't have a retrieval piece. Okay, so then next is the intelligent tier. So this is useful for long-lived data with changing or unknown access patterns. So this is what kind of a data you have to store on S3. You can choose the best class. Then you have a standard IA, which is for long-lived infrequent access data. So here it actually doesn't happen, but just to give you an example so that you can visualize. So standard data, you can say it is for the faster access. So you need that data very frequently, and you need it very fast. So in that case, your data would be backed up on or stored on a SSDs. So that is like one way of seeing the standard storage type. Then there might be a case where you are basically storing your archives, okay, some backup data, your database backup, which you don't need to access frequently, and time to retrieval or latency can also be that is also okay to if you have a little bigger latency, that is also okay for you. In that case, these kind of functionalities can also be these kind of a storage classes can be chosen. So let's assume if data is lost, okay, uh, then you are also happy. In that case, you can choose one zone IA, which is the long-lived, infrequent access, non-critical data. So here data is replicated at least on one zone, okay, and minimum storage is 30 days or and so those kind of a thing. So depends upon what kind of a data you have, you can choose the storage classes. Okay. Then there is one important storage class which is the Glacier. So this is used for archiving the data with the retrieval time ranging from minutes to hours. So what happens in glaciers, if you have some archived data, for example, database for 6 months old database, which you might not be uh, backing up, or you might not be needed very frequently. So you can ask AWS to choose this storage class. So whatever they will do, they will archive your data and remove it from the system and then put it in some cold storage. And if you need it, then you request them and they will retrieve it and put it back into the AWS system, so that you can retrieve it. So here the retrieval time may uh, maybe up to hours, or those kind of a thing. So depending upon what kind of a data you are pushing, what kind of a data you are storing, these storage classes can be chosen. And if you see here, the price is price also differs depending upon what kind of a data it is, how many availability zone it is replicated, what is the access time, those kind of a thing. So for example, Glacier very cheap as compared to standard intelligent tiering. Okay, so hopefully this storage class concept wise, it is clear. Or in case of any queries, let me know. Okay, good. So let's try to upload file again and see how we can choose the different storage class. Okay. So if I choose here, these are the different storage classes. Uh, so this is the table which is here. I have just put it into a slide. Okay. So these are the number of days, if you put it into a Glacier Deep Archive, then minimum 180 days it has to be there. Okay. Then obviously you can encrypt that data also, so that is also possible. You can put a tag, or you put a key, and then obviously just upload. That happens. Okay. Next part is the AWS S3 object lifecycle. So just for your information, this is a very old snapshot from the AWS S3, so you will not see this anymore, but this gives a very good picturization how you can manage the object lifecycle. So normally what happens, like, if you store something on S3, the more the data becomes old, it becomes very less useful. Like, you will not be accessing it very frequently. So if you have a database backup stored on a S3, if it becomes old, then probably chances are very less, like, you would take it out and restore your database using that. So and since, like, S3 storage class, the charges are, like, more for frequent charges, like, frequent usage. If you do an infrequent access, then, like, the charges will be less, and if you put it into a Glacier, then charges will be even more less. So it makes sense, like, you do the translation of your objects from one class to another class. So that is also possible using the S3. You can create an object life cycle. So this is one of the example which is there. Like, for example, if you see first one, so here the day 0 file is uploaded, and if file is 30 days old, you can create a transition rule so that it moves from standard to infrequent access. Okay, and then from infrequent to it moves to the Glacier after next 60 days. Okay, and from Glacier you can say, like, after 425 days object is automatically deleted. This is what you can manage the complete object life cycle. So let's see how it happens here. So it is the life cycle. You can create a rule, for example, rule 1. Okay. Okay. Current version, for example. So here you can choose like, whatever is there. So, AWS just keep on updating the GUI, how it works. Okay, so you can just choose the scope and what will happen. So we will not go deeper into it, but I think, like, getting the concept is more important. So you will find the different documentations in AWS, because this GUI just keeps on changing. It's just the concept which you need to apply. Okay, so this is how you can just keep adding the life cycle rules on a particular object, or even on a bucket itself. Okay, so is this object life cycle clear to you? Like, conceptually, I think you should be able to answer the questions if somebody asks, because once you start doing it, it may happen, like, after 6 months you have a different GUI. Okay, good. So coming to the next, then we will see the AWS pricing. Okay, so AWS pricing, as we have already seen, it is like, pay for the storage. It's GB per month in most of the cases. You also pay for the bandwidth, like, which data goes out of the AWS. Okay, then you can always refer. There is a one page on S3 pricing. It will give details on how the pricing is calculated based on the classes or, like, other things which you choose. One more important thing is, AWS also charges based upon the region. Okay, so for example, in US, like, if you have a US region, in that case prices may be different. But if, for example, we see the Singapore example, So here is like they have a $0.03, which is like 3 cents per GB for first month. And for data transfer out, first GB is free, and then they may charge 10 for like for 10 terabyte of month, $0.12 per GB. Okay, and then beyond 10 TB, like they may have a different uh, charging uh, price, which may be less than this. So similarly, like they will publish all different uh, values, so you can always choose your region and speed. So region these costs they also differs. Like here we can see, like for S3 they have a 0.023 dollars per GB charges, and for S3 Intelligent it is also same. But if you go down, for example S3 Glacier, then if you see this price is 0.04 per GB. So based upon the data storage type, the cost also reduces, but that you have to consider what is your use case and like different characteristics of your storage device, storage class typically. Okay, so now we are just coming to the end of this S3. So here we will now discuss what are the different use cases of S3, where S3 can be used. So one of the use cases is backup and archiving. Definitely, like if you have to take the backup of your machine, your database, or like some other server, you can use S3. You can take up the backup and upload it on a S3, and if needed, you can always retrieve it and restore your systems. Okay, and you can also do the archiving, like if you have like if you're running some newspaper or something, like and if you want to archive your old post blogs or news, you can use S3 for archiving those also. Next part is the content storage and distribution. Okay, then you can also use it for big data analysis. Then you can develop the cloud native applications, like for uploading and downloading the data from it. You can also create data recovery. So what happens, like you can data recovery can be at a multiple level, like it can be across the uh, data centers, which is like if you choose a correct data storage, your data like is replicated across the data centers or availability zones, and your basically you cover up the disaster recovery. But if you want to do the data data recovery or disaster recovery across the regions, you can also configure, like your whole S3 bucket data is also replicated to another region, so that if one region is affected, you can just use the data from other data region, or basically another AWS region, and bring up your services. Okay, so next one last which I just intentionally left was a static website hosting. So some of the times it may happen, like if you have to host a site which is not serving any dynamic content, which doesn't have server side processing, it's just a static pages, and somebody wants to see. So there also we can use S3. So some of the sites like very less, but like very small site, and uh, the static contents or newspaper kind of a thing, you can post it on a website. So we will be doing the hands-on on this static website hosting itself. Okay. So this is the lab part, which I will do it, and then I will ask you to replicate in coming 1.5 hours. Okay. So coming back to S3, if you see, if you click on a bucket, you will see multiple options. Okay, some of the options we have already uh, explored, and this is what is the static website hosting. So okay, so by default, website hosting is disabled. Okay, So you can configure it. Okay. If you configure it, then you have to give your index file, so which would be first file as soon as this link is accessed. This is basically the endpoint which you can further map to your DNS entry. Okay. Or you can just share this address itself so that somebody can browse your site. So here we need a index.html. So what we will do, we will create a file here. Okay. Index.html. Okay. And let's add a very simple head and close body close. Okay. Okay, main tag is that. Okay, HTML and then HTML close slash. Okay, so let's inside the body we say hello the DevOps Guru 2020. Okay, let's save it. We can just give say, and this file can be anything, but let's assume it's HTML. Okay, so for any errors you can also provide error. So let's copy this file, rename it error.html. Open. This is error page. Okay. So let's give error.html. So if you want to do a redirection, that is also possible. If you have some other site, you can redirect all the requests to there. Okay. Okay. So let's upload these files. Drag and drop. Okay. So if I okay, so I just come back to this site properties. Okay, just website person. If I just try to access this URL, you will get 403 forbidden because this whole bucket is not public. Okay, so we need to do some settings. So let's come back to this slide. So it will tell what to do. So first part we have done. We have enabled the static website hosting. Okay, we have created the index page, and we have also created the error page, and we have uploaded. And the next part is to disable the public access to this bucket. So if we see when we created this bucket, so we had blocked the public access. Now we have to enable it so that anybody can access this site. Okay, confirm. So AWS has a very good functionality. If you try to change some default permission, so it will ask you to confirm it. So you just type confirm and confirm. Okay, now let's see, can you access it? Oh, again it is not accessed, so access is denied. Okay, now let's see what is the problem. So we have chosen the static site permission, we have cleared block all public access. Okay, this is we have done. Okay, what is left now? Okay, now we don't have a public bucket policy. Okay, so we need to give a permission. So let's come back to the bucket here. Come to the bucket policy. Okay, so by default, though you have enabled the access, but you don't have a policy attached to it. Okay, so you can okay. So let's do this one. So I have already pasted this JSON here. So we will just reuse it. You can always get it from use the policy generator or those kind of a thing. Yeah, you can also use it. Type of policy ST bucket, sorry, ST bucket policy. Sorry, ST bucket. Okay. What you want allow principal is your basically the URL to this bucket, which is like this. Copy this. Okay. Action. So we will allow everything. So just coming to the what actions we have given here. So principal, this is a resource. Okay. Okay, sorry, my mistake. Principal has to be the star. Let it be all. Okay. Resource name, that is the ARN which I just copied from there. Okay. Actions. Let's see actions here. Action is ST get object. So here, since this is a website, people will be downloading the pages. Okay, so they just need to have a read access. Okay, so here we can choose read permission. Okay, get object, get object. I think this should be okay. Okay. And what else? That's all. So if we see, we don't have a statement. But, so this is what policy has been generated. So we can just copy this policy. So this is one way, or otherwise you can just whatever we use, whatever is there in the PPT, we can also use it. So if we just compare it, so we have a version, then we have a statement, version, and then we have a statement. Okay, then action is get object. It's basically let's see. We can always go back and modify. Effect is allow. Principal is star, and resource is whatever is the bucket name. Okay, so let's save it. Action does not apply to any resource in the statement. Okay. Action. So let's come back to the okay. So we have to repeat it. So let's use it here. We use this one. Okay. Change the resource from this like this. Okay. Now let's see. Okay. So it is okay. So now if you see here, your bucket policy has become public. So you will get this notification every time. Okay. Now let's see what is there. So now we should be able to go again. no such key. The specific key does not exist. What is the key here? Okay. This which we have enabled, well, basically disabled. This is not needed. Bucket policy we have enabled. So we should be able to see this. Okay, index.html. Okay, so it says like index.html does not exist, no such key. So let's come back. Index.htm. Okay, so this is the problem. It's not a HTML, it is only HTML. Okay, so name has to be, so we can do one thing. So here we can change the name, okay, or otherwise we can just go back to here in where we define this static site and change the file name itself. So here we can just name it like this, okay, and save it. And now let's see if we can get it. Okay, this is the error page. You don't give anything. So this is your site has been posted. Okay, so any doubts, any queries till now? I hope this is very straightforward thing. Is it?
Yeah, hi Anis. See,
Yeah.
it will be helpful if you explain that JSON policy, like principle. What does it mean? Um,
Okay.
I'm mostly confused on principle. What does it mean, principle?
Good. So if you see here, you can always like see the description also. So if we see, these are the things. Okay, so principle, if we go by the definition, is policy to specify the principle that is allowed or denied to a resource. So here principle can be these values. So basically, who is allowed to access? Is it AWS account, IAM, federated users, or no? Those kind of a things. But since here we are saying like this is the public site and anybody can access it. So we don't need need to define whether it is only for the AWS account or it is only for the root account. It is for the IAM roles. So that's why we have kept it as the star here from the who can access it. So that is basically the principle. So you can always go and get the definitions. Okay, so this is the principle. Here which service you want to choose. Okay, if you want to choose all the services, you can define. And then action. So what you want to create an object, you want to get an object, or you want to basically get object list. So those kind of basically operations you need to define here. So that time we just add a get object, but it was to be object object. So we can just see later what is the exact value. Okay, then AR in the resource AR. So whenever you create like you just go here, so you will see the other details, not here, but overview itself. So it's basically this is the bucket name which you have to give like this one. So this will remain same, okay, and after that your bucket name. And if you have some folder or something, or file, you can give it. But for hosting a website, we need to give a complete bucket. So this would be the S3 colon sorry AWS colon S3 and 3 colons, then followed by our bucket name. Okay, this is how, and then you can add a condition. Okay, if you want to give it, so that you can also define. But I think best way is to have a same policy, because it is a standard policy for you want to post a site. So basically allow all the principal action operations. Basically you would allow get object on S3, and this is your bucket which we want to provide access. Okay, does it make sense?
Yes, Anil. And one more question. That SID is just a name of the policy, right?
Yes. These are just names. The version it's just when it was created, SID is just name.
Okay, so by default, when someone creates a bucket, only owner has a complete access over the bucket. Suppose if I want to give an access to the member of my team, that is also done through this policy.
Exactly, or see that comes in a different way. You can this particular part was for the posting a website, but you can always define it. So in that case, you don't need to define the it here. You can always provide access control from here. So you want to give it a public access to everyone, okay, or you want to have it for other AWS accounts. But by default, your team members they should have access if you have given them a S3 access as a part of their user permissions. So when you create a user, you have to give a permission. So if you have given them S3 read permission, then they should be able to access this bucket. So you don't need to define this bucket policy. Yes. So if you want to give access to other AWS accounts, you can add that AWS account also. Like for example, if your organization is maintaining 2 different AWS accounts, so and if you want to share a particular bucket with them, or in that way, so you can always add your AWS account ID or email ID, and then give the appropriate permissions. Okay. Or otherwise, if you want to have a read access to everyone, so everybody should be able to read, write, or post, so you can choose everyone. Okay. So what kind of operations they can do? They can only do the list. They can write objects. They can read bucket permissions, or those kind of things can be defined here. Okay. So those kind of things can be easily managed. You don't need to define a particular policy for that. Okay. So that is the part. Okay. So I think we have already well past 10 minutes, but half an hour basically. So if you want to continue, we can continue. Otherwise, we can just take a 10 minutes break and come back, and then start with the our next, which is basically labs hands-on. So whatever I explained to you, you can just try to replicate and do a lab hands-on. If in case of any issues, we can just discuss and resolve right away in the online session. Okay, so let's take a break for 10 minutes. Let's come back after 10 minutes. It's 10:42. So let's come back after 10:55 as per my time. Okay, then we will start with the lab hands-on.
So
Yeah, any queries which you?
no, good going. Thank you.
Okay, then let's come back after 10 minutes.